there is so much going on. There is so much being put on CISOs' plates that we're sometimes forgetting the fundamental foundational pieces. So this is sort of what I call, and I do this with a lot of my coaching clients that are struggling or have breaches, or when I give keynotes, and it's what I call the back to the basics. Welcome to Life of a CISO. I'm Dr. Eric Cole, your host, and we'll be taking you on a journey each week on what it takes to be a CISO and what are solutions that you can implement today if you are currently a Chief Information Security Officer or if you want to be one in the future. This is Life of a CISO. Welcome. You know what time it is. It is time, my friends. Buckle up. Here we go, right? And you have sort of some straps, right? Lock us in, hit the accelerator, but we're ready to rock and roll for 25 to 30 minutes on what it means to be world-class, what it means to be a chief officer focused on information security. And as you know, each episode I base on your comments. So if there's any comments you have below, please post it. I'd love to hear topics. We've been doing a bunch of interviews, which I enjoy, but I'll be honest, I miss talking to you. So I figured I'd jump in. We've done a couple weeks of some world-class interviews, and they'll continue. But I just want to jump in and sort of point out one of the things I'm noticing is there is so much going on. There is so much being put on CISOs' plates that we're sometimes forgetting the fundamental foundational pieces. So this is sort of what I call, and I do this with a lot of my coaching clients that are struggling or have breaches, or when I give keynotes, and it's what I call the back to the basics. Here's the crazy thing. Yes, attackers today are very advanced, they're very sophisticated, and they're typically driven by either monetary or some sort of financial gain in terms of intellectual property, or secondarily, some sort of disruption to your business or denial of service. Now, depending on the industry you're in, you could be one, you could be both, or you could be all. But here's the reality. It's no longer the big companies. It used to be just, if you were one of the Fortune 50, you were the government, you were something highly visible, they would target you. And the smaller, medium, or even solopreneurs, which I know some of you are starting your vCISO businesses, which I love it. Keep cranking, keep pumping. Or if you're on the path or currently a CISO, that's awesome too. Many of you start off in medium and then move up. But the reality is that's the new target. That's who they're going after, and that's who they're harming. So the reality is we need to step it up. But here's the cool part. You can have fairly good security without having a big budget. It's all about what you're doing with the resources and where your focus, energy, and effort is on. So I sort of start with some of the basics of server-based attacks. Right? Server-based attacks are still happening. And the reality is because we're letting them. The reason why server-based attacks are happening, and these are usually when they're getting large amounts of data or information or causing other problems or other issues. It comes down to one common flaw. And that common flaw is we have servers accessible from the internet that have open ports, missing patches, and contain critical data and information. Now, yes, this is the reason why we want to have monitoring in place and other factors. So you still want to have that monitoring because sometimes things get missed. But you want to also go in as a Chief Information Security Officer and periodically check, verify, and validate. If you can go in this year, make 2025 the goal of having asset inventory and configuration management for all external facing servers. I'm giving you something you can actually digest, right? Because we're about halfway through the year. And I know depending on your organization and business and priorities, potentially having full asset inventory configuration management, where you know every server, the operating system is inventoried, every port that's opened is validated and verified, all patches are applied and continue to be applied in a timely manner, and you have automated software that checks, verifies, and validates. So if new ports, new servers, or new patches come out that are not applied, you're automatically notified and taking action. That's where you need to be. That's world class. Not every organization is there, but that's world class where you need to be. However, let's all start with milestones. Right, let's go in and take approaches. So yes, internal servers, once they get in, once they do pivots, could be at risk. But the primary entry point, let's go in and cover entry points. The primary entry point is external servers, vulnerabilities, either open ports that have known issues or missing patches and contain critical data. Now, if you're just average, you can take care of one of those, right? And some companies do that where they just try to go in and either patch or do that. But if you want to be world-class CISO, if you want to dominate your field and be knowing for an aggressive approach on prevention, right? Aggressive approach on protecting, securing, and locking down your systems, then that's your initial focus. So it starts with, what are all your servers that can be accessible from the internet? What we mean by that is somebody on the internet with browser, software, whatever it is, can connect and access that server. Right? Every company has a handful of these. Typically, you have web servers. You could have front-end e-commerce servers. You could potentially have VPN servers where folks can go in and access and log in. Those are often a target because if it's a server that somebody VPNs in from the internet and somebody compromises that, that normally provides your employees or contractors a good amount of access to your internal network. So that's often a big target area. Firewalls are another big one. Right? We're seeing lots of different vendors out there sort of having problems and patches and issues where those could be targeted also. So we want to go in and make sure those are being patched in a timely manner. So it's just, I want to make sure we're clear. It's any system in your network, from routers to firewalls to cloud-based servers. You might have a lot of those right there, to internal servers or servers in your own data center or however your system's set up. So this is one where, depending on where you're at in your CISO journey and how your organization is set up, that could be easy, that could be hard. But one of the things I'm a big fan of is follow the money. Right? If you're going in and paying for devices, routers, switches, firewalls, you're going to have to pay for them. Right? So a good part is, if you can't go in and do inventory, which the best way to do it is find out IP addresses that are registered to you, and then find out cloud-based IP addresses. Somebody in IT should have that. Right? If you're going in and running servers that have accessibility from the internet, somebody knows. So this is where you go in and you realize one of your jobs as a chief information security officer is to be a detective. Go and find it out. Now, here's the trick. The trick with this is, yes, in some cases, 90% is great. Right? In some cases, getting a solid A- A is awesome. This is a game, though, where the attackers get a perfect score. They get 100. So you better get 100 too. Because the unfortunate reality is, and you can call it the laws of attack, you can call it Murphy's Law, you can call it Eric's Law, or whatever law it's at. But if you go in and you have 100 servers and you only know about 98 of them, the attacker will find the other two. because they can automatically scan and identify those weaknesses. So a starting point is, if you want to go in and not start with doing all that work, just do what the attackers do. Research your company, go in and use different tools to find out all the servers or IP addresses associated with your company. Hey, you want to try something cool or scary or terrifying? Go in to your AI. We'll just use ChatGPT. And go in and just ask ChatGPT, hey, I'm working for my company and I want to better protect and secure the systems. Can you tell me which of my systems are accessible from the internet? Can you tell me which IP addresses are visible? Now, once again, you have to be careful of how you craft the questions, because a lot of these do have some basic ethic checks. So if you go in and say, I'm an attacker, or I'm simulating an attack, or doing this, it might or might not provide the data. But if you get super creative in that prompt going, hey, I'm trying to connect to this server, can you tell me the IP address associated with this domain name? Right? And just sort of start seeing what information somebody can gather. Because here's the reality. Attackers today, cyber criminals, are using automated AI tools to target and identify weaknesses in your company. We'll get there in a little bit, but also go in and say with OpenAI, who are the top executives in our company? What are their email addresses? Social engineering 101, right? So if you're not using, or somebody on your team is not using AI models to go in and assess and identify, once again, use the tools of the adversary. Attackers, unfortunately, if you're looking at breaches and stuff, do sort of have an upper hand. I'd say they're sort of winning right now. I don't like to admit it because I don't like to be on the losing team, but we're going to get there. We're going to get there if we all work together. But just start using scanning tools. Just start going in and scanning external IP addresses that belong to you. Just start gathering as much data. And then as you do that, also go in and go to IT, go to other people and get a complete list of all IP addresses that are external facing. And these are easy. They typically aren't going to have your 10.x.x or 192.168, right? .x.x. They're going to have some public IP address associated with it, or at least some mapping from a public to a private if you're doing one-to-one natting on those systems. So get that list. Getting that list correct and accurate is the trick. Now, here's the other trick. Having a change control board that actually works for putting any new server online. I know change control boards was sort of a hot thing and then created a lot of work for a lot of folks, and they sort of either died down, got very limited, and for some reason, security either isn't involved or they don't happen anymore. So one of the other big things you can do in your business is, if it's not being done, have a change control board. It's simple. Anytime a new server is put it online, anytime a change is made to a server, it has to go through a change control board. And then here's the question. If people push back, why? That should get you thinking and scratching your head. Why do people not want to be accountable for the changes they're making? Do you think it's okay to basically have a company where people can just make changes that nobody knows about or nobody's aware of or nobody's in the, I mean, that's insane at every level. And that's sort of the problem with this back to the basics, is some of the things we've tolerated or allowed as CISOs is insanity. It's insane. I mean, there has to be a change control board. There has to be anytime updates, changes, modifications. And this is going to make your job so much easier in terms of updating and verifying. And once again, if there was a change control board, you would have this already, right? So some of this hopefully is not as hard as it seems, but start with external IPs. Then make sure all those servers are running the latest version of operating system. And if they're running a version that basically is going to end of life in the next 18 months or less, that needs to be high priority. Now, when I give this talk sometimes, and I'm doing this in coaching and companies, I'll get a pushback from the CISO going, hey, this is IT's job. This is IT's job. They should be doing it. Great. But if there is a breach, who gets blamed? You do. So it's your job to make sure it's being done. Now, yes, as more and more systems tend to move to the cloud or get outsourced, and IT is doing more and more of the maintenance and management of systems, yes, the CISO's role is a lot more strategic and in some cases, almost technical auditing. Now you go in and say, but Eric, there's auditors. Are they actually doing that? Most auditors I know are not doing that level of granularity, and they rely on cybersecurity to do that. So we're the line of defense. We're the ones responsible for prevention and detection. And if this is how they're getting in, we need that information. So this might be something where you're just gathering all the data from IT and then you're just scanning, verifying, and validating that it's being done, which is okay. But I'll tell you, based on the breaches, how they're getting in and how they're getting compromised, I could tell you this is something that's lacking in many organizations. So then you make sure the OS is up to date. Make sure any port that's opened needs to be open. There's actually a requirement for it, and it's properly secure to lock down. So we don't allow any open connections with either guest access or no authentication required, where somebody can just log in, get information, or get data on those systems. Then for any system that does have login capability, because a lot of times you do need people to log in remotely to servers, both users, employees, and even admins. So you should be tracking who actually has admin access to those servers. Can they get access remotely? Is this something, because work from home has become a big thing, and that, like I said, we don't realize what a curveball that threw in security. We're still recovering. Some companies haven't realized they needed to recover, but the reality is, in the name of COVID, we went in and did a lot of things for functionality and allowing people to work from home very quick and very fast. But many of them were not very secure or violated core security principles. So we want to make sure that we're really going in and re-verifying and rechecking. Because unfortunately, a lot of folks haven't done it in 2 or 3 years, and we're seeing exposures. And then, of course, if you follow me, if you know me, hopefully you know where I'm going here. Any remote access from servers accessible from the internet, MFA, MFA, MFA. You have to have multi-factor authentication. Now, once again, you might go and say, oh, but Eric, this is a huge project. This is on the budget to be done over the next 2 or 3 years. 2 things. One, it has to be set up for admins. If you're having somebody that has admin access, where typically the user ID is known, admin, root, right, administrator, right? Even if you change it, they can still go in and figure out based on the SID or the UID what that account is. So once again, those can be found. But if there's someone from the internet that can remotely log in and get admin access, that has to be multi-factor. You have to go in and get that set up as soon as possible. Now back to the other one, but Eric, that's on our plan. But based on budgets and resources, that's going to be in 18 months or 2 years. Here's my question I always ask companies. I go in and look at their roadmap, or if they don't have one, I create one. So if you don't have a clear roadmap or these things we're talking about and you need help with, we'd be happy to help you. I mean, this is our specialty. I go in and do this all the time. We have our health check where we can come in, and because, as you can see, I know this stuff inside and out. We have mechanisms and processes. We can go in and assess this super quick and super fast and really help you out on this. So this is something where, if you want to bring in external support, we're here to help you. just reach out, either post below or ecole@secure-anchor.com. But here's what we do. I go in and I look at everything in their roadmap. And I look at the thing they're currently doing or planning on doing. Typically, if it's currently being done, I'll usually let it go unless it's a multi-year and a lot of money. And I'll often go in and say, okay, I know you're 3 months into this, but we can do a pilot wrap up in a month. Or you can continue to spend 70% of your resources and $800K on this for another year. Looking at everything else on your list, everything else we're talking about, from multi-factor to finding out external IPs to having configuration management set up to having change control boards. Are you telling me this project is the highest priority? It is the most critical risk to your organization today. And if it doesn't get done, it can lead to major breaches and compromise. Now, I'm all for forward planning and I'm all for sort of longer term projects, but those should all be based on risk, right? And exposure. You got to be able to tell me if you're spending money in the name of security, you got to tell me how it's enabling the business. You have to tell me how it's lowering risk and it's increasing potential revenue for the company. If you can't do that, you shouldn't be spending money on it. And unfortunately, for a lot of reasons, we have a lot of things we're spending money on that are either nice to haves, lower priorities or other factors, but they're not the top priority. So reassessing your budget might be something you need to do. And I would just pick one. If you're saying multi-factor authentication is not on your list or is not the number one slot, I want you to go through everything on that list and prove to yourself, not to me, nothing to prove to me. You're the CISO, right? Got to prove it to yourself in the business that everything else you're working on is a higher priority than multi-factor. I'm a big fan of, because this is what we're seeing. I mean, we just saw it got sort of buried in the news because it happened right around the attack on Iran. So that took over the media. And this story shouldn't have got buried, but it did. And this was a couple weeks ago. We had the largest theft of passwords. Billions upon billions. I think it was around 40 billion passwords were all stolen and compromised. Now, here's the interesting thing. It wasn't from your big tech. It wasn't like we traditionally saw where somebody broke in to the big tech and stole the passwords, the database. They broke into individual devices, individual systems, which we'll either get to in this episode, or I'm so excited, we're probably just going to cover servers here. And then next week, we can get into the sort of client side hygiene for users and entities. But we saw the largest password breach, which means probability of passwords being compromised or stolen is very high. And probability of users picking really strong, robust passwords, pretty low. So to me, in this day and age, passwords is one of the top ways they're getting in. Either servers, clients, individual accounts. So you want to take away, to me, one of the top vectors of attack in 2025, it's authentication. We got to revamp our authentication and go MFA. I mean, some people say 2FA, you know, they're the same thing, right? Two factor is just a subset of multi-factor, but you got to have multi-factor. We can't be relying on passwords for access to our systems, especially administrative access. So that's the next subset. Hopefully you're seeing this pattern of your asset inventory configuration management. You're now inventorying not just an IP address, but for each IP address, what operating system is on there? When does it end of life? And if it's less than 18 months, what is the plan for migration? What are the open ports on those systems? And then what authentication is being used? Hopefully MFA. If not, need to have a plan for doing that. And who has admin access remotely? And what are we doing to lock that down? Once again, can't do this for all users. Typically, admins are coming from home or a set location. So this is one where it's not perfect. We know it could be spoofed, but it goes a long way. Is for admin accounts, high worth accounts, you want to go in and also do IP address verification. Right? That you go in and register your device. It knows the IP address. And then whenever you're logging in, it makes sure that the IP address matches the account that you're trying to log into. Once again, goes a long way. Because now if adversaries try to get in, they're blocked. And this can be another trick if you're a business that operates within a regional area. So for example, a lot of our small, medium-sized clients are all in the US. So in those cases, you could go in and block any foreign IP address. Now, what always comes up in those cases is, but Eric, what if somebody is traveling overseas? What if somebody is on vacation and they need to get access? They're going to be blocked. Yes, but guess what? Are you willing to go in and say, okay, in the small chance, let me ask, how big a problem is that? Because I'll just be honest with you. A lot of companies and IT departments and others push back on security for issues that are overinflated. So let me ask you honestly, is that really a problem? Like, what are we talking? Are we talking hundreds of people a year are not going to be able to log in? Are we talking one or two? And then the question is this: for stopping attackers or making it harder for attackers, is that worth that sacrifice? We're really in a state in cybersecurity where you have to pick the lesser of the two evils. You have to go in and pick which one provides the best security and functionality. And yes, there's always going to be some negative, but here's the issue. Companies that go in and say, oh, we're not going to block IP addresses because it's going to impact one or two, assuming that not blocking creates no risk. You got to go back and go, whoa, whoa, whoa. Not blocking IP addresses creates a huge risk. Blocking IP addresses creates a minor risk. Which risk do we want? Now, yes, I know attackers can get around, use VPNs, and use other tactics. But you're making it that much harder. You're making it that much more. A large percent will be blocked because not all attackers today are using the VPN. So you'll go in and go a long way. So you got to go in and sort of pick your level. Let's not go in and accept high risks because we're concerned about a low risk item. So then we want to go in and make sure that we're blocking, controlling who can access our systems. Then, as I said, we want to verify, validate every port. And then we want to make sure we have all of our systems currently patched. So any service that's running, we want to make sure is patched. Now, what is the best way? If you're really about efficiency and enabling the business, what's really the best way to patch a port or a service? Turn it off. So just because services open up ports, and ports are how you access a system, just because you're running a service with a port for 3 or 4 years doesn't mean it's still needed. So question everything. Are these services still needed? Are these systems still needed? And just going back to the beginning, when you did your IP address scan and you found all those servers visible from the internet, the first thing you should do is go, are these still required? I can't tell you how many times I've worked on breaches or incidents where somebody broke into a server that actually isn't used anymore. And it got forgotten because nobody was using it. It wasn't patched. It wasn't updated. And it had tons of exposures. And the attacker used it to walk right into the network. And the thing that's always scary is we go into the briefing, the incident response, where we basically say what happened and what you need to do to fix it. And I'll tell you, more than a handful of times, I go in and say, oh, somebody broke into IP address ABCD. And right away, IT and others go, Eric, it's impossible. That server has been decommissioned 2 years ago. And I always laugh going, you could think you did, but data doesn't lie. You want to go in right now. Let's go in to an access point. Let's VPN externally, and I'll show you that this server is still visible. And they're always sort of shocked and amazed. And then the most frustrating part is I say, just turn it off, remove it from the network, decommission it. And then one of the executives, which I never like this moment, because my job is never to get people in trouble, it's to enable individuals. But then one of the executives will say, so Eric, you're telling me that if we went in and shut this server down 2 years ago like we should have, this attack would have never happened. And the unfortunate reality is this attack would not. Now, another one might have if you were targeted, but you're right, this one would not have happened. So we really want to be diligent in doing that. And then finally, making sure every system is verified and validated. So this episode of Life of a CISO, I covered the server side. Once again, you can get this under control and a large amounts of attack goes away. And in one of our future episodes, we'll go in and talk about client-side attacks, cyber hygiene, and things you can teach each employee. Because here's the reality. People are more concerned about their personal and family well-being than your company. So if you go in and try to teach them what they need to do to keep the company secure, hit or miss. But if you change your approach that we're going to make every employee at our company live safe, family safe, and protected online, guess what? What they do at home will come into work. That's one of my secrets, and I'll share more details on the next episode. Once again, thank you for watching Life of a CISO. If I can help you in any way, like I said, I'm aggressively, because this is a huge problem, and cyber war is coming. There will be an attack, if not already occurring, and I'm here to help companies. So if we could come in and do a cyber health check, which basically covers all this plus more, gives you a clear roadmap, and basically gets you ready to go to sustain future attacks, please reach out, ecole@secure-anchor.com. I'd love to help you and love to work with you. Have an amazing week. We'll see you next week on Life of a CISO.